Hello everybody, welcome to another video of Learning Malware Analysis with Park T. In this particular section, we will be covering malware advanced techniques. We'll be looking at some key concepts within this space. One of them being privilege escalation, which is exactly how malware attempts to increase its reach. So if you consider it from the perspective of the three components, you'd consider how it does replicate, or rather how it does gain more access. So this will affect that more. In the next instance, we will be looking at persistence methods, which is how the bomb can stay in execution for a longer time, so to speak. However, in general sense, it is simply how to keep a malware in execution state for a longer period with all three components. However, the bomb is the key focus for any malware developer at this point. Then we'll look at the data encoding, which still focuses on how to hide intent of malware, and then some other techniques that are used to launch malware in a more stealthy way. That's for this section. However, in this particular video, we will be looking at privilege escalation. Some of the things we'll be covering will include what privilege escalation really is, some of the types of privilege escalation that are available, and we'll look at a scenario which has been practically used to put this into context so that we can just glue all this together. So let's get right into this. Privilege escalation is basically trying to circumvent a control in order to gain more power or access as opposed to what you already have. In the real world, consider it, you're underage, you're 15. However, you want to have some beer. But when you go to your parents to tell them you want to have some beer, they tell you can't have beer until you're of legal age. Now, legal age, depending on the state you're in, may be 16, 21 at that point. And you don't want to wait that long. So you decide that you want to have your beer now. You may play it into scenarios. The first one being, you may trick an adult to getting you beer. Now, if they get you beer, you've asked someone of a higher privilege to do that for you. Alternatively, you may have a friend who's not of legal age, but is in a position to get you the beer. Consider a friend that works part-time in a beer store. You may ask them to lift the beer for you, so you have accessed more than you are supposed to. Now, you'll still have your beer, but then it doesn't make it legal in any way. So the same thing happens with privilege escalation. You find a problem within a system, or rather a weakness, and attempt to exploit that weakness to get the system to do your bidding. This may be caused by a number of things, the most common ones being a software bug, a design flaw, or insecure configuration. So that leads us to what types of privilege escalation are there based on this. So there are mainly two. The first one is a vertical privilege escalation, and the second is a horizontal one. So the vertical privilege escalation is the most common, and it does involve moving a user from regular level of access to a more privileged form of access that usually has less of doubt in the system. So if you consider our beer scenario, you asked an adult to get you the beer. Now, this will enable you to be seen as an adult, because when the store owner looks at the person purchasing the beer, he does not see you. What he sees is the adult. So as you can see, it shows you for who you are not. The second scenario is horizontal privilege escalation, which is basically being able to access more, but from people within your rank, and not needing to circumvent from a perspective of a more privileged person. Now, in this case, the intent would be different, where you want to do it maybe because you want to prove a point to someone within the same rank and the likes. So consider it a bet between two students. Now, if the two students have a bet, if a third student is involved as a witness, anything done by the first student to the second student will still lead to a student-to-student scenario. It doesn't lead to a more privileged scenario. So if you look at it, that's basically how it works. In the malware world, there has been a scenario recently that did show this is being used a lot. There was one sample of ransomware known as WannaCry. Now, if we look back at our definition, let's break it down from how it worked. So the WannaCry bug did have an interesting action within its replicator. In order to replicate, or rather increase its reach, the replicator was made more offensive when you're looking at it from the component perspective. So the bomb does do the actual encryption of data, but within the replicator, it did include a weakness within Windows systems known as Eternal Blue. This one has a publicly listed exploit with a Microsoft reference of MS17010. Now, this bug within the server message block can allow you to gain elevated access when exploited. So as you can see, there was a design flaw by Microsoft on this, and it's still considered as a software bug. So depending on how you want to justify it. So when it affects the server message block service, what happened is every time it needed to replicate, it attempted to exploit that system before copying itself. So this gave it a more hybrid functionality, where the malware had worm-like tendencies, but it was still just ransomware. So it gave it more autonomous control within its replicator. Now that gave it elevated access, which again meant that when it does execute, it doesn't get a lot of hindrance from the system, and it doesn't need a lot of user interaction. So compromising one system on the network led to compromise of multiple systems on the network as long as they were unpatched. So that's a scenario which is actually real, and it did happen quite recently.